Okay, everything old is new again as Hudson's Bay recently announced plans to relaunch Zellers an entire decade after they shut down the discount department store.
What does that tell us about current retail and branding trends? For insight, we welcome branding expert Mike Leon from Brand Heroes Marketing. How you doing, Mike?
Good, thank you. How are you doing?
Oh, we're doing well. We're doing well. Okay, so let's talk about this. This is big news, broke last week. Starting next year, the Bay will debut a Zellers e-commerce site and also feature the retailer in some of their department stores. Talk about this move and if you think it's a good one.
Well, you know what? Just anecdotally, the people that I've been speaking to, friends, colleagues, everybody is so excited about Zellers coming back. They remember Club Z, they remember Zeddies, they remember all the thrills of the discount buys. So the brand clearly has meaning for people. What I think is interesting about this is the way that they've evolved their opening is this is going to be a digital first presence. So to me, this almost feels like a classic brand like Nintendo creating new games that respect the heritage of it, but also take into account where shoppers are today. So I think it's interesting, and I think it's kind of the right combination of nostalgia with a little bit of what's hip today and what's important today.
Yeah, Mike, do you think, discount shopping seems to be becoming more popular as people are trying to save money with rising prices and inflation. And I think it's kind of interesting because, 5, 6 years ago, the Hudson's Bay Company brought in Saks, which was a high-end retailer, and now they're looking back to Zellers, a discount retailer. Do you think that Hudson's Bay, they're kind of testing the waters when it comes to Zellers for plans of further expansion with Zellers?
I think so. I absolutely think so. In fact, about a year and a half ago, Zellers came back in some pop-up stores. So I feel like that was the first kind of initial go at testing the waters. And now, I think it's really interesting because, you're totally right, Jeff, that Hudson Bay has really evolved in a more high-end scale in the last little while. And, introducing Zellers or reintroducing Zellers provides shoppers with another alternative. And it does it in a way that kind of becomes a little bit hip, geek chic when it comes to the brand because people love going back. They love the nostalgia factor. And, as we saw years ago when Target made its entrance into Canada, which didn't go super well, but people were still very much predicated on the belief that, hey, this is a discount brand that has some high-end appeal. And Zellers, we'll see how that plays out.
Mike, you mean Target? That's what I used to call
Target. Absolutely, Target.
Now, what's interesting about this, too, though, we, of course, know Zellers, and I remember Club Z, but there's going to be a large part of the market that does not know the brand.
You're 100% right. And you know what's fascinating about that? I find, especially when, you talk about, millennials and Gen Zs, it almost doesn't even matter. I could think of brands that they have found or refound that were tired brands. Like Champions is a great example of it because that was a brand that was losing market share for a while. And folks in high school got a hold of it and they made it huge and they made it their own. So I think in a sense from, if I was the brand kind of looking in on this, I would say, okay, listen, what is it that people are going to take from this that I want them to stay really true to? And then what is it about it that they might be able to run with on their own and kind of have their own unique interpretation? And I think offering up Zellers within the Hudson Bay stores is the perfect opportunity to give audiences and fans a little bit of leverage with that, but also in an environment that's very controlled and very much what they're already used to. So I think it's fascinating to watch how customers become fans and how they're actually going to make the brand their own, and then what the next step of that might look like. Stay tuned to see what the ads look like for Zellers.
Yeah. Listen, Mike, just in a remaining minute here, I want to ask you about nostalgia overall because it seems like so many of us are looking back. We don't have to look any further than Stranger Things. I mean, look at Kate Bush on top of the music charts 35 years after her song was originally out thanks to that show. Why do you think nostalgia is seeing such a resurgence right now?
You know what? I think there's a lot of reasons. I think one of the reasons is certainly, in times of trouble, we like to go back. And, you've seen this with, recessions. The recession of 2008 just happened to coincide with when Bell reintroduced a very similar look to when Bell was the only game in town. So, bringing people back to a feeling of comfort during tough times is definitely one of them. The other aspect of it, Jeff, too, is the multi-generational play. These 80s brands, and I can say this as a child of the 80s myself, we champion these brands. We grew up with them. And now we have kids that we're trying to kind of reintroduce this to, that also are trying to make their own. So there's a multi-generational aspect to this as well that allow people to kind of hold on to the brands that they loved as kids, but allow their kids to actually experience it their own ways as well. And Stranger Things is such a great example of that, because if I watch it, I'm going to take a lot of different things than what my kids would watch and take from it. So the nostalgia becomes that link to those generations.
Super interesting stuff for sure. Brand Heroes Marketing Manager Mike Leon, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you both.